You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
Reality radio for a really great future. We're talking real money.
All of that for nothing. If you want to know why watching the stock market move around is an exercise in futility, well, just look back at the last week ending March 6th, 2020, and you'll see why. All of that. It was, as I mentioned in yesterday's podcast, it was a dizzying week. And yet, the net result, almost without exception, you look at European markets, Asian markets, U.S. markets. The Dow's the only exception. The net result of all the machinations of the last week was absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Absolutely nothing. Nothing happened. It was like all of this. And we ended the week right about where we started the week. So there you go. Much ado about a whole lot of nothing. Now, the Dow did end up a little higher, but the Dow's weird. I keep trying to tell you that. I wish we would stop using the Dow as a means by which to measure the market because it's just 30 stocks. That's not the market. The global stock market is like 13,000 stocks. It's not the market. So quit paying attention to it. And by the way, this is this is about money because it's about our economy. It's about jobs and all this stuff. Corona beer does not cause coronavirus. Okay? That's just an absolute fact. The two are not related in any way. Why people stop buying Corona beer? No one knows. 2, the world is not going to run out of water, okay? It's just not going to happen. So you don't need to stock up on bottled water. 3, you can get the virus, coronavirus, influenza virus, common cold virus, whatever the virus, in a variety of viral ways, and generally it comes from touching stuff and then not washing your hands. But it doesn't come necessarily from money. There was a recent thing where somebody asked the World Health Organization, can you get it from money? And they said, well, if you handle money, you should wash your hands. But they're not saying money is a primary means by which the virus is spread. We need to cool off just a bit. Just take a breath, step back. I mean, my wife, who is immuno-challenged a little bit because of some medication she takes, she went to Walt Disney World yesterday. It was a risk. Yes, it was a risk. But getting out of bed every morning is a risk. Being alive means you're going to die. It's a risk. Life is a risk. And it's fascinating to me how we ignore the greater risks to our health and find ways to panic over the lessers. We worry about COVID-19, but we will get into an automobile and go sailing down a crowded highway at 85 miles an hour and think we're really safe. You got to put all this stuff in perspective. Your risk of dying is greater on the highway if you're really concerned about getting yourself killed. Really concerned. That is your priority. Well, you just can't be too safe. You hear them people say that. Oh, don't make fun of people who are getting scared about this COVID thing because you just can't be too safe. If you just can't be too safe, then don't get behind the wheel of your car. Really, don't. Don't drive. 1, you won't go anywhere then, and you don't have to worry about COVID. And 2, you're not going to die in the car. Also, don't put electrical devices next to the bathtub. That would be a bad one, too. Let's see. What else shouldn't you? You know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't have to be obvious to be dangerous. It doesn't have to be on the news to be risky. They don't put car wrecks on the news very often because they happen every day. They're just normal. I have lost more family members to traffic accidents than I have to any disease known to mankind. I know that's an anecdote, but it's probably true for almost all of us. I know more people who have lost people to accidents than to flus or viruses. And that's a fact. Again, it's an anecdotal fact, but I think it's a pretty clear fact when you look at the number of deaths every year. So, don't put a mask on. Take a deep breath. Let's get on with it, shall we? Remember, you can call questions into us anytime at 855-935-TALK, 855-935-8255. Tomorrow, we'll be doing our live show, tomorrow being Saturday the 7th, from 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. Eastern, noon until 2 Pacific time. We will be in the studio because we know that listening to the radio does not cause COVID-19. We know that. You're safe. You're even safe calling us. We cannot transmit the virus over these lines. It doesn't work. So the safest thing you can do is listen to Talking Real Money, the podcast, the radio show, which is on in Seattle on Saturdays, and you can call us live. If you want a live conversation, Saturday's the time to do it between 3 and 5, 855-935-TALK. All of the other times, call 855-935-TALK and leave your question there. Today, we're just going to do one question, and then we're going to get on to the weekend because it's weekend time. And this question, where did I put it? I just had it on my screen. Oh, here we go. The topic is HSA rollover advice. I recently changed jobs and have an HSA with my previous employer. An HSA is a health savings account into which you can put pre-tax dollars on which you haven't been taxed, and use them for medical expenses. So it's like getting a little kicker to pay for your medical expenses in that you don't have to pay taxes on them, on that income. The question goes on. It's often useful to roll over a 401k when changing jobs, for example, to keep it simple by not having a lot of 401ks at different companies, and to get access to better funds that an employer might have offered. Should the same be done with HSAs when changing jobs? If so, can you recommend a good place to roll over an HSA? I usually use Vanguard, but they don't offer an HSA. Often when you leave an employer because the employer picks up the cost of the HSA, you pretty much have to roll over your HSA in most cases. Finding somebody to whom you can roll it, that's tougher because HSAs are not they're not meant to be a long-term investment vehicle. They're meant to be used over the course of the year or a couple of years. You use them to pay for medical expenses. Yes, they can roll forward and eventually become part of your retirement, but a lot of the money in HSAs gets used quickly to pay for doctor's visits or labs or prescription drugs or whatever it might be. Lots of other things, eyewear. So an HSA is not really profitable. And this guy said he usually uses Vanguard, but they don't offer one. And the reason is they're just not profitable for these companies. And the average costs for them, are $15, $20, $25 a year because they have to charge a fee. And that's one of the reasons I'm not I'm not nuts about HSAs, because it's hard to find a good one. Although I was doing a little research online after I received this question. And the internet has revolutionized some businesses. Now, it may be that the math doesn't work for them long term, but because there aren't a lot of people involved, it's computers. A company called Lively has set up an HSA plan in which you invest with TD Ameritrade in a self-directed brokerage account without fees, no minimum balance. You can set up, as your balance grows, you can have money transferred into other investments. They offer a lot of you got everything from money market funds to ETFs. It's a lot of things you can get into for free. There are other things that might cost you, but you don't have to go into those. They give you a debit card. They have a great online portal that I was looking at. It's really very nice. And they charge zero. They don't charge anything. And they do free transfers and rollovers from other HSAs. Now, this is not a recommendation for Lively because I know about just slightly more about them than you do. But you can link to your bank accounts to fund them. It looks, what I see just first glance, looks pretty cool. And as a matter of fact, I'm really thinking about setting up an HSA with them just from what I've seen. So I would check them out. It's a company called Lively, Lively, and their website is livelyme.com. I don't get paid for that. That is not an ad. I get nothing. I don't even know if they're good. All I know is what I read, and what I read is reasonably impressive. Once again, questions, send them to us through talkingrealmoney.com using the contact form, or call them in at 855-935-TALK. We have finally gotten through the backlog of calls that we had, so if you call soon, you get moved to the front of the line. But please give your whole question there, and we will answer it on the podcast. That's the way this works. 855-935-8255. Go to talkingrealmoney.com for lots of other cool stuff. And what else is there? Oh, and by the way, if you need to get a little help from an advisor, go to talkingrealmoney.com and set up an appointment. You can do it online. The whole meeting can be done online. There's no cost, no obligation, and no high-pressure sales pitch ever. Just go to talkingrealmoney.com and set up an appointment. Anything else? Yeah, go watch the videos. They're pretty cool. We've got a lot of good stuff there. And send in your questions. TalkingRealMoney.com or 855-935-TALK. Have a great weekend. I'm Don McDonald.
Talking Real Money. We hope you realize that the information provided on Talking Real Money is for educational and hopefully enjoyable purposes only. Providing personalized financial planning or investing advice takes time, so please consult with a really good fee-only fiduciary investment, tax, or legal advisor. We know a good one. Investing must always involve risk. In other words, you can and probably will lose money at times. Also, as much as you want it, no one can accurately, consistently predict the future. So past performance doesn't tell you a darn thing about what the future will bring. Unlike many other programs that say something similar, Talking Real Money is not trying to get you to buy or sell any financial products or securities. Instead, the program is provided as a public service by Vestry, a fee-only registered investment advisor. Thanks for listening, and please visit talkingrealmoney.com for more information and disclosures. That's a wrap.